Hello and welcome to another segment of Conversations in the Nick of Time. I'm your host, Nikki Roach, and I want to welcome you to this platform where we invite industry leaders, thought leaders, influencers, and such who are absolutely stellar in their respective industry. And I am just delighted to have this opportunity to share with you these mentoring moments, things that I wish I had even just a couple years ago with some of this content, as it is very complex when you get out here and you're bombarded by so much information. But we understand that not everybody can get everything when they need. So here we are to give you just that, a destination for mentoring moments with a global influence. And so we have all of these different things that we're doing. Many of us have opted to do a number of different things, business related wise. Those who are in the same space I am in, where we keep our 9 to 5, but we also have this heart work that we're very, very focused on and building out. Not always the smartest thing to be a solopreneur for a long amount of time, but then also there's not always this thing where you have to create something from the, as they say, started from the bottom, now we're here. You don't always have to have that as a testimony, but you can have other ways about going to take care of business, to launch a business, to sustain a business. I'm honored to have on air with us today Ron Story Jr., who is a master at this idea of building sustainable businesses and not always, again, having to start from the ground up. Ron Story, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me. Sorry about that. I was muted a little bit. It's my fault.
Yes, you were. Just a little more about who this man is. He has been a full-time entrepreneur for over 20 years and has been instrumental in the creation, development, and leadership of over 30 companies. Ron went from a struggling insurance salesman to becoming a self-made entrepreneur born and raised in East St. Louis, Missouri, now living in Medellin, Colombia, the Republic of Colombia, that is, not South Carolina, Colombia. He is the founder of software company PitchDB, the world's largest podcast search engine with nearly 3 million hosts. Yes, 3 million hosts. He is also the author of the book titled The First 100 Miles, which challenges business owners to recognize the opportunities in front of them and offers practical ways to grow faster. And we have him here today to tap into all of this great expertise. Ron, you started off, as it says, struggling insurance salesman. What was it that clicked on the inside that made you say there has to be something else?
Well, actually, it was before then. So just so that everybody who's listening in St. Louis, I'm from across the river. I'm from East St. Louis, Illinois. So all of my East St. Louis people, I don't want them punching me in the head because they say, well, they said you was from East St. Louis, Missouri. This is Illinois. So, but I started as a kid collecting cans from my neighbors and recycling cans in order to get the Nintendo game that I wanted or a new basketball or whatever. And my mom was just like, yo, you can get these cans and you can make some money. So I would just knock on my uncle's doors, my neighbors' doors, and daily go and get their 5 to 6 Pepsi cans or Stag beer cans that they would be drinking. And, so before there used to be recyclable bottles, right?
Right. Oh my God,
And
the
then,
Coca-Cola.
yeah, you had
Ooh, you're
the
dating
recyclable.
yourself. You're dating
Yeah.
yourself.
So there used to be a lady who had a store, and my neighbor, Fred, his mom would recycle the bottles. But my mama never bought bottles for us as kids. So we had cans. And she was like, the same way that Fred's mama does the bottles, you could do the cans. So I used to just go get the cans and stomp on them. And when I got a trash bag filled, my mom would put them in the car and we would recycle them. So that's why I started learning to be, I guess, a hustler. Like you can get out there and just put yourself out there and you can make some money even before you're old enough to have a job. right? So, I started working at McDonald's. I'm like, dude, I'm making just as much flipping these cans as I am baking this bread at McDonald's. What am I doing? You know? So that's where it all started. It started in East St. Louis. I made one decision that totally changed my life. And there's a program when you're in high school in St. Louis called Inroads. And
Yes.
at the time, my friend Reggie Beard, who still works at the company that he interned with in the ninth grade at Inroads, he still works at Boeing today, 30 years later, right? So
Wow.
it's an impactful, opportunistic place. But I chose to do another program called Maya, and it was the
Okay.
Minority Youth Entrepreneurship Program. And it was started by another St. Louis native, Sandra Marks.
Okay.
And Sandra Marks had worked out this deal with Washington University where we could, as high school kids, take a summer business camp and get college credit, but we had to start a business that summer. That decision there changed my life because at that point I realized, oh, I don't have to go work for somebody. Somebody actually owns the businesses that hire employees. I
Wow.
can be that guy. And from that point forward, I was like, I'll just always do my own thing. It was always in my mind, right?
But it was the exposure, right?
Yeah, if I never went to MyApp, the Minority Youth Entrepreneurship Program, I would have no idea. The only entrepreneurs I knew were drug dealers, right? So I had no clue about like running your own thing.
Yeah.
And so that turned into different opportunities. This guy, I can't think of his last name, but he had a law firm, and his brother was the mayor of East St. Louis, Gordon Bush, and
Okay.
his brother had a law firm in East St. Louis. And I remember going to that law firm. He was like, "Yeah, if you want to be in business, you should learn from me, and I can teach you a lot about the law side of it." And I went in there with a brush in my pocket. I'm a high school kid, and he's like, "First off, nobody in business carries a brush. Brush your hair before you get in here." I mean,
Oh,
so I have all of these great experiences of guys just saying, "Look, if you really want to do this, do it, and
but
we'll
you
show
had,
you."
yeah, but you had that structure around you, even going back to the cans, like somebody was still modeling a
Yeah,
behavior and a habit, or entrepreneurial streak, because we didn't even call it, we weren't saying entrepreneurship back then, right?
no,
Um,
no, you was just working.
Right. And you just knew, like, because I remember even I have family members that where we knew they were coming through on a certain day of the week, and there was a like a grocery bag on the doorknob with the cans in it.
Yeah,
From so I understand it, but I never looked at it like this was entrepreneurship.
yeah, it was. That was entrepreneurship. So, and then Mr. Bush, he was like, "Yo, you should learn about like how the law works.
Mhm.
And you may want to do law if you're going to do business." But I ended up not liking the lawyer stuff. I would go to court with him, and I'm like, I hate this. Like, he's just sitting there arguing all day. I don't want to do this, you know. So, I went away to college. One of my mentors or counselors told me, "Hey, you're really good at math. You like drawing. You should be an engineer." How much money they make? He was like, $60,000. I'm like, I'm going to engineering school. I didn't even know what engineers did. I had no clue, but I knew they made 60 grand, and this was in 1995. I'm
Oh,
like, yep, I'm only applying to engineering schools. Now,
sign me
here's the
up.
funny thing. Wait, let me tell you the funny thing. There were three of us in that conversation: me, my friend Olu Mitchum, and Reginald Beard.
Okay.
I went to school for civil. The other one went to school for electrical. The other one went to school for mechanical. They're both engineers right now at Boeing and at SIUE Edwardsville.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that didn't do the engineering thing, but we all were in that same conversation.
Wow.
And the difference is that I failed out my first year. So I went to the University of Illinois. I failed out my first year, and I wasn't like partying anything. I was a really like religious dude. I was in church every day. I ran one of the largest Bible studies on campus. So it wasn't like I wasn't like trying. I just wasn't good enough.
No, it wasn't
And
your thing. It wasn't
yeah,
your thing.
exactly. Yeah, I wasn't good enough. I'm okay with saying I wasn't good enough, And that summer after my freshman year, I said, you know what I can do? I'm gonna start my own thing. So I tried to raise 800,000 track in Champaign, Illinois.
You said
And
you tried, you raised how much?
I tried to. I didn't do it. I tried. It didn't work.
You tried to raise some money and it didn't work. Okay.
Yeah, I went around to every bank outside of Chicago in the state of Illinois. I drove my car to every bank, and they all told me no. And there's one guy, he was my SCORE mentorship because I knew about the SBA from doing the Wash U thing. And they're like, go get you a mentor from SCORE. So this guy, Myron Sholem, he said, look, you should go to this bank and talk to my son. My son is the president there. And I went, and it was just terrible. He was like, dude, we're not giving you the money. He's like, since you came here under my dad, I'm going to tell you the truth. You don't have any money to put down. You don't have any experience. You know, poor kid, your parents ain't going to give you the money if they have it. This ain't going to work. And I'm like, crestfallen. I'm just like destroyed. I'm like, Myron, why you sent me over there for him to tell me this, But here's what happened. He said, man, just stay in school and you'll be fine. Just keep going and you'll make some money. You'll come back. 2 weeks later, he calls me and he says, come. Hey, I want to talk to you. Come to the bank. So I go in there. I got my business plan. I got my suit on. I'm like, yeah, he changed his mind. I knew he was going to give it to me. Right. So I sit down and I said, yeah, what do you want to talk about? He was like, well, let me just start off. We're not giving you the money. That's not why I called you later. And I'm like, what you call me here for? He said, man, look, I went through your business plan after you left, the one that you left with me. And it's one of the best written business plans that I've seen in years.
Oh, wow.
And we have a guy that does business plans for us, for our clients who have the money, but they don't have the plan put together. They complain that he charges too much at $80 an hour. But I think if you just charge $40 an hour and you would write business plans for them, I can send you all the business you could dream of. And I was like, I'm working at Applebee's making $2 plus tips. You told me they're going to give me $40 an hour? And I was like, so how many hours I got to work? He said, how many hours it take to put together a plan? Well, me being an idiot, I didn't know. I'm a kid, right? So I had this software I had bought on my new computer, had bought this software called Business Plan Pro. And I was using the software, it had templates in there. So all you do, you just pick the industry, it loads up a template, and in like 3 hours, you can get it done.
Yeah.
Right. And I told him, I said, that plan took me like 3 hours. I got this software. He was like, all right, don't tell nobody else that. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, if you tell people you can put together business plans in 3 hours, they're not going to believe that you did any research or any of it is valid. So he was like, dude, anybody I send to you, you got to charge them at least 20 hours minimum, because they'll think you took the whole week in between your classes in order to actually do the work. So if you charge them 20 hours, they can do it. You could go bigger than that if you want. I'm like, nah, 20 hours to pay for 3 hours of work sounds good. I ain't gonna be greedy.
Right. And this is like, you're probably still just in shock. Like, this is a whole nother wave of mentoring. Like, it's rapid fire mentoring, right?
Yeah, all because of his dad. Just because his dad told me to go into the bank and show him this business.
But what if you hadn't gone prepared?
Oh yeah, it would have been really bad. It would have been terrible.
Like,
but I had learned
you didn't get what you wanted. You didn't get what you wanted, but you got something even better.
Yeah, I got what I needed, right? Because if they would have given me $800,000 at 19,
but I applaud you for your confidence.
I'd have had the first miniature go-kart track with real cars on it, because I'd have put Ford Escorts on that go-kart.
A mess. So now you get put. This is fascinating, because so now you go in, you have this business plan, you leave it, but you leave with your head down low, because he basically says no. Not only am I saying no, everybody's going to say no.
Yeah.
So go get your job, go back to school. But then he calls you back 2 days later, and 2 weeks later, surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. And that changed everything. Right. So here's the funny thing. This is how life works. So I'm a big believer in, you got to read what the world is giving to you. right? So people always say, well, God spoke to me. Well, I mean, that may be true, but God, in my life, I don't hear an audible voice. I look at the circumstances,
Right.
right? So for some people, it may be an audible voice, but for me, it's the circumstances. It's like, oh, wait, this is an opportunity just opened up out of nowhere. Yeah, I should do it, right? Because why would the opportunity present itself if it wasn't an opportunity for me? Nobody else saw it.
Right.
So this is my opportunity. So that's kind of how I look at things. But that decision helped me to make enough money to where I started investing in mutual funds. And this is in 1997, 1998, right? And one of my buddies, his name was Walter. He was a former basketball player at U of I. He came to the Bible study I ran on Fridays. And he was like, yo, I got this new job at Prudential. I know you making money, dude. I know you got some bread. So why don't you buy mutual funds with some of the money you making? And I'm like, all right, explain it to me. I didn't know what it was. Explain it to me. So he brings me into this little sales meeting, and I started putting like $500 away a month into these mutual funds out of my 20 hours of work for 3 hours, 20 hours to pay for 3 hours of work, business plan business.
Yeah.
So, I'm doing like 4 or 5 of these a month at the time. So I'm making like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. And this, like, I'm hitting the 50. The 50, 60 grand I was supposed to make as an insurance guy. I'm hitting that on a monthly, like $5,000 a month on a monthly basis doing business plans.
Okay.
Right. So he's like, yo, you should put some of that money away. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So I just started putting every extra dime I had into those things. And I'm like, oh, I'm good at this. I wasn't good at it. The stock market was just going up no matter who put their money into it. But it was like, yeah, this is what I should be doing. So I was like, yo, I want to do this. So I went to Prudential and asked, how can I do what Walter's doing? And they're like, oh, you need a 4-year degree and a securities license. Okay, I don't have a 4-year degree. Let me go figure that out. Right. And then I went to another place at a bank, and I'm like, yo, maybe if I worked at the bank, I can work my way up. And I started talking to the guy at Bank One, and I'm like, yo, how do I get to do the mutual fund thing? And I showed him I brought in my portfolio, like, this is what I got. He was like, it's yours? Yeah, I'm like, this is what I got. I want to do this for other people, though. And he was like, oh, you got to go get a degree. And I'm like, man, all right, I guess I'm going back to school, because I wasn't going back to school anymore. And that same summer, my mom, to make a long story short, I know we only have a short amount of time on the podcast, but my mom called me and she said, Illinois State University is starting an entrepreneurship program. It's a pilot program. It's the first university in the state of Illinois that will offer you a degree in entrepreneurship. Everything else, you can get business administration, marketing, accounting, but you couldn't get entrepreneurship, how to start something,
right,
type of thing. So I still had a lease in Champaign. I transferred to Illinois State, and I was driving an hour to each direction to school every day because I couldn't get out of my lease. So I would drive to campus, stay there all night, and drive home because my classes were stacked. So I'm like at my friends' houses and hanging out on campus until 8 at night.
Making it happen. We're making it happen.
Yeah, you gotta go. Like I collected cans. Come on, man. Like
I can do
I collected cans. Like, you think my pride ain't there. I'm trying to win, My first semester at Illinois State, a professor says, does anybody here want to be a financial advisor? So, kids be like, yeah, like 6 of us. It's an auditorium with 200 people. 6 of us raise our hand. And she says, well, we got an opportunity. A top 5 internship with a company called Northwestern Mutual is taking on financial advisors while you're in college. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. Right. So I ended up doing it. My first year, I was they do like 1,500 students countrywide. I think I was like number 200 out of 1,500 my first year. And then my second year, my senior year of school, I ended up being number 55 out of 1,500. So I get to go on stage and I got an award and all of this stuff. Right. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to do this for the rest of my life. And that's how I got into the insurance business. And I had never thought about it, because if Walter hadn't, asked me to invest, I would have never thought about selling insurance or investments. Mm-hmm. So, to kind of give you a fast forward, was there for 4 years, eventually had 8 Allstate agencies,
Okay.
turned that into managing Illinois and Iowa, about 350 offices for farmers insurance. And then in 2010, I became a partner in a publicly traded company called the Marketing Alliance. We're still traded now. MAAL is our signal. So I became one of 12, and that's what I'm still doing today.
Wow. But then not only what you're doing, because it is dual rolling it, because I mean, you have the company for the podcast, you have this company still. You have written a book. You're out speaking. You've got all these roles that you're playing. But do you feel that you have alignment at this point?
Yeah. So at the beginning, you think that because I did this thing, this is what I have to do, right? So I don't really participate in the insurance agency. The agents are contracted, they run their own offices. I just get paid a commission on top of anything that they sell. So I don't even participate in that business. It's just a monthly cash drop. It's like
Right.
owning an apartment.
Right. And
right?
that's why I was saying, like, isn't it an alignment? Because it is just so interesting how it's usually pitched to us. We go to grade school, we graduate from 12th grade. Are you going to go to college or pick a job? And then you do that and you are there for what, 30, 40 years. It's kind of like that is dying down, but there's still like a little bit happening because the traditionalists are not retiring as early as and they're working way longer than they need to. But then you have Gen X that's kind of in the middle, to where our parents worked at the same company for 30, 40 years and got their plaque and their lamps. But then now some of us are in that space, but then you have Gen X, Y, Z, and they're like, look, it's not about the dollars. It's about social responsibility and all these. I want to have flexibility. And I hear you really taking advantage of this opportunity that, like, don't lock me in. But even as a kid, it seemed you had that same mindset.
Well, I think part of it is, again, like I said, you just kind of look at the opportunities, right?
Yeah.
With the insurance agency thing, the wholesale insurance agency thing, I realized that I couldn't control what the individual agencies were doing.
Right.
Like, I can't go to somebody who runs their own office because I'm a distributor, I'm a product provider. I can't tell them, you need to sell more of my stuff. They'll just say, don't come in here anymore. We'll sell for somebody else, for something that I can have control over again.
And that's honest. That is honest. Yeah.
So once I realized that, it's like, oh, all right, I got to figure out what I can control. I have these guys under contract. They'll keep selling as long as I don't bother them or try to annoy them in any way. So I started looking for opportunities in the software world. And I was going to move out to San Francisco, but I read an article by a lady in St. Louis named Judy Sindicuse. And it was called Silicon Prairie is on the way, or something like that. And they had opened up a new co-working place downtown St. Louis called T-Rex.
Yes.
And it opened up in February of 2012. I read this article in September of 2012. I saw that she had a portfolio of companies called Capital Innovators. And one of the first class that came in February, I called the guy, Don Breckenridge, whose family used to own like the Sheraton Hotel and a bunch of other Breckenridge companies in St. Louis. And I called him and I said, hey, Don, I see you have this software company. It says you're targeting insurance agencies. I used to run every farmer's office in Illinois and Iowa. I think I could get you in there. And I used to have 8 Allstate agencies myself. He was like, dude, when can we meet? I'm like, we can meet tomorrow. So I go in, and it was like, it was a crazy day. It was September the 12th. I'll never forget it.
Wow.
September 12th, 2012. I have my meeting with Don at 1 p.m. At 11 a.m., I get a phone call from my stepmom. Hey, your dad just died. He had a heart attack. And I'm, holy crap. And I'm just like destroyed. Like, I'm bawling, like, holy smokes. And the crazy thing is that this was on, me and my dad would go to lunch every week. And this was on a day when, after my conversation with Don, we were supposed to go to lunch, right? So I'm like totally like messed up. But I talked to my mom, I talked to my sisters, gave them the news. And I'm like, well, I mean, I can sit here and cry all day. I can go to my meeting. And I went to my 1 o'clock meeting, closed the deal with Don. And he was like, man, everything all right? You got distracted. I'm like, oh yeah, my dad died at like 11 o'clock this morning, but I didn't want to miss this meeting.
What in the
So
world?
I'm like, look, I gotta go, right? So he was like, all right, man, you're crazy, but take some time to kind of mourn your dad, and then we can get to
We can circle back. We can circle back. So I want to just welcome each of you who or maybe just be tuning in just now. You are listening to Ron Story Jr. He is an absolute guru and influencer when it comes to starting up a business, leveraging opportunities within the business, and building sustainable multiple streams of income. And so we're just delighted to have him on board, and thanking each and every one of you in your respective places for your support, and also our sponsors and partners. We want to thank them: TV Network, ALA Publications, All In Music and Media, Covenant Exchange, KSTL's Jubilee 690 AM, Mosaic Ceiling, and Sparkman Publications. Thank you.
Are you teachable? Ask yourself that a few times. I recall a time ago when I was really heavy into PR and I had a client, and she was so amazing. She remained a lifelong mentor of mine. And I recall an event, very high profile C-suite executives, and she was the platform speaker. And after the culminating event, here we are sitting around with all of these Fortune 500 executives, and I'm literally sitting at the head table with all of these executives from popular brands in your home right now, and laughing and having a good time and sharing stories. And at the close of it, I'm taking her to the airport, and she said to me, "Good job, kid." She said, "You are really good at what you do." She said, "But I am so disappointed in you." I started laughing, and I was like, what? How did I do such a great job and you have disappointment in me? And she said, yeah, I'm disappointed. And I was like, why? That doesn't make sense. She said, you literally sat there in a room full of executives, full of Fortune 500 executives. You carried great conversation. You were extremely cordial to everyone, and carried on, and you really held the room down. You really did. She said, but not one time did you sit there and posture yourself as a student. You didn't take the opportunity to learn and glean from those around you. Instead, you postured yourself as an equal, standing shoulder to shoulder, never using the moment to learn. And for that, I'm disappointed. Honestly, at that time, I just was like, okay, dropped off at the airport and didn't think a thing about it again. I was like, she done lost her mind. That is crazy. And it wasn't until about 5 years later, working at an agency, and her words hit me like a ton of bricks. And it wasn't until that moment that I truly understood what she meant about my posture and learning to be teachable. And from that day forward, I have always gone into every room with what can I learn? And that's from anyone, up or down, lateral, everyone. Be teachable. Think about those moments, those experiences that you've had, the rooms that you've sat in. Are you teachable? What is your posture? Just sharing my thoughts.
So there's a word, Ron, that comes to me whenever I am interviewing and having these conversations in the nick of time to help individuals in their space of influence. And the word that came to me, and I've been wanting to jump in and give the word, but it's leverage. And leverage is the word that came to me. And leverage is a verb defined as use something to maximize advantage, or two, to use a quality or advantage to obtain a desired effect or result. And oh my gosh, if leverage was a person, it would be your face, because you have not allowed anything to cause you to leverage, whether it was a relationship or an actual opportunity, or a moment, to not use what you have. And that's what I'm saying, like this whole concept or idea of starting from ground zero. It's not that. Like, you have literally taken the time to be very strategic in leveraging people, places, and things. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing that I've learned by growing up in East St. Louis, you learn to be resourceful, right? So really, growing up, all I had was relationships, right? So I'm 5'7". So as a kid, I was a little dude. But you got to grow up in East St. Louis without getting beat up or robbed to get your starter jacket taken or a kid taking your hat. So I'm like, I got to be friends with the tough dudes. Yeah. I ain't tough, but I got to be friends with them so that they know if somebody messes with them, they be like, man, leave Ron alone. Ron's funny. Ron's cool. You know, he let us shoot basketball at his house or whatever, right? So I learned to leverage relationships and to build relationships as a kid. And that's kind of been the biggest thing. I mean, you know, I think that anybody I've ever worked with in the past, they've always seen me as a very transparent, straight up person. And I can call them at any time and ask them for any type of favor within reason.
Yeah.
I don't like to burn bridges. I try to keep those relationships there and to be as resourceful as I am resource draining. Yeah. So if I can provide something to the ecosystem as much as I take away from it, then I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Oh, that's good language that you're using right there. Now, you have mentioned, I had a chance to hear a few of the other podcasts you had been on, as well as read some of the information that content that you've put out there. And one of the things you mentioned, speaking of leverage, the fact that you don't always have to start a business. Why not buy a business? Unpack that for us, because that is not normal thinking for all of us.
Yeah, so it's actually more expensive to start a business than what it is to buy a business.
Okay.
Right? And most people don't think of it that way. But the analogy that I like to use is real estate. What is real estate? Is it a business? Yeah, it's the housing business, right? Or it's the rental business. You're renting space, whether it's commercial or residential. But let me use an example of, imagine that there's a 40-unit apartment building.
Okay.
And it has a 3-year waiting list of people wanting to live there. So they're just waiting on these apartments. It's the best apartment building in St. Louis, right? And you go to a bank and you say, hey, Bank of America, there's this apartment building on Euclid in the Central West End that has a 3-year waiting list. I want to build the exact model. I got the floor plans and everything. We're going to build an exact replica in a vacant lot right across the street so that we can pick up the slack on that 3-year waiting list that they have. And the bank's going to say, okay, that's an interesting idea. Who's your developer? And you say, oh, I'm the developer. Okay, who drew up the plans? I already got the plans. I bought the plans offline. Okay, who's going to do the excavation for the concrete? I'm going to do that myself. And who's going to put up the drywall on the walls and the frames? I'm going to do that myself too. And what about the roofing? Yeah, I'm going to do that. And the windows. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And the bank's going to say, we're not giving you that money. You don't have any experience in doing drywall, roofing, windows, any of those things.
Yeah.
Right? So that's like starting a business. When you go in there and you say, I'm a solopreneur. Who's going to do the accounting? Me. Who's going to do the marketing? Me. Who's going to do the sales? Me. You sound just like that person, but we don't think about it because it's not in a physical environment, right? Now, let's fast forward a month, and let's say that that building was owned by someone, and the person who owned it, the husband passed away. And I just happen to be driving by that building, and I see this lady outside bawling. She just lost her husband of 30 years, but I don't know this. So I see her crying. I'm like, hey, can I help you out? Is everything okay? And she says, yeah, I own this building. Now, my husband used to own it, but he passed away. I need to sell it. And I'm like, need to sell what? This building with the 3-year wait list? She's like, yeah, if you know anybody who wants to buy it, let me know. Yeah, okay, give me your card, right? So now I'm going back to the same bank. And I go to the same bank and I say, hey, you know that building I told you about? And they're going to say, man, we told you we're not giving you the money to build a lot next door. No, I don't want that. The guy who owned it died, and I met his wife, and she wanted to sell it. What do you think the bank's going to say? You got the income statement? Yeah, I can get it from her. You got the balance sheet? Yeah, I can get it. You got the rent rolls? Yeah, I can get it for how much she want. I don't know yet. Now all of a sudden they're interested.
You're buying it up.
You know why they're interested? Because the concrete's already poured.
Yeah.
It's already there. The windows are already up.
Yep.
The roof is already on the building.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to get into the taco business, I want to sell birria tacos.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go and try to lease out a taco restaurant. I don't go rent a space. You know what I do? I call every Mexican restaurant in St. Louis and I say, hey, are you willing to sell? I guarantee you for the right price, one of them is. So I'm going to buy that store for probably less than what it would cost me to pay for the kitchen equipment if I started a new one.
And hiring and all of that.
Yeah, it's already running. But guess what? It has a proven track record that people at least like their food.
Right.
So you know what I can do? I've just minimized all my risk because I can put my little goofy tacos on the menu. And if don't nobody buy them, just take it off, and I still got a great Mexican restaurant.
Make it seasonal, right?
like the McRib. We only gonna put these on when the McRib comes out, right? So that's the difference.
That is
like the
so
banks,
interesting.
You think that's a good analogy, right?
Yeah, it's clear, totally
Mhm.
clear. But even to back up a little bit with the whole idea of a solopreneur saying, okay, I'm going to have this business. I'm going to run this business. That was eye-opening. You said, oh, so who's going to do the accounting? Who's going to do the marketing? Who's going to do? Okay, that shakes us in our boots.
Yeah, it's no different than saying you're going to pour the concrete, do the drywall, do the painting, do the roofing. We would think that was goofy if one person told us they were going to build our house.
But that's what we're saying.
But that's what we're going to the world saying. And then we're wondering why they're looking at our companies like, I don't trust they're going to be able to get this done. How many clients you got? Can I talk to them?
Right. Oh.
Give me some testimonials and some proof. Because, I don't want to give you this money and then you can't deliver. And then that's what a lot of solopreneurs start off doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the entrepreneurial dilemma because we were good at something. Someone told us we should take it to the marketplace, but they never told us how to properly take it to the marketplace.
Not and be sustainable.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So here's the con that's gone on for the last 20 years.
Uh-huh.
Right? There's a lot of information on how to start a business.
Yeah.
That's a con. Anybody can start.
Yeah.
Like, how do you start? You just find somebody to sell something to. You're in business. You start it. So that's the biggest con. Oh, I can show you how to start a business for $100. Cool.
Listen, or you click. We can have a business together in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, we can file an LLC for $45 in Missouri and be straight. Like, just go to the Secretary of State page, right? So,
and print it off.
To start a business isn't the hard part. Right. It's staying in business. So here are the 3 things that every entrepreneur has that makes them a success and a failure at the same time. Right?
I got my pen.
Arrogance.
Oh, yeah.
Undercapitalization and incompetence.
Start with arrogance.
Arrogance, undercapitalization, incompetence. We're arrogant enough to believe that we can do it better with no experience. Like, we have no experience in running a business like that. We're like, man, I can do this better than my boss. I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna show him the right way it should be done. So that's how every entrepreneurship starts. We start with that arrogance. And then we're almost always undercapitalized.
Yeah.
Well, I got 6 months worth of income saved, but we don't realize I got to put that in the business and live off of it. So I'm burning the candle at both ends. That teaches us to be resourceful to make things work, because we're like, I can't spend money on that. I need to be doing this myself. So we start hustling.
Yeah.
Right. And then the incompetence. We're complaining that we can do it better than our boss, but our new boss doesn't have any experience doing it either, which is ourselves. So we don't even know how to manage any of the things. So we end up getting taken advantage of by consultants. Oh, I'm a marketing consultant. Give me 20 grand and I'll help you. And they give you some goofy report that they had a VA put together. Oh, I'm a SEO thing. I don't even need SEO. Why are you selling me that? Right? Well, I can help you.
And then also we buy a whole bunch of the things that will give us the bling and the glitz and the glam, and you don't even need that yet. Like, you haven't even.
I think a lot of times we buy purchasing feels like progress.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it feels like, because I hear this all the time. They're like, man, I'm thinking about starting a business. I'm like, all right, so what do you plan on doing? Well, I want to tell you, yeah, I got to still build our website. I'm like, man, dude, you're dead. Like, you have no idea, But when you sign this paper, I ain't signing nothing. Because whatever you about to tell me, I done probably already thought about 300 times.
Right.
And so I'm not about to sign something the rest of my life. I can't talk about something I already thought about before you told me about it. Right. So it's all of these things that you realize, oh, business is a very simple equation. Customer with the problem, my business with the solution at a price. Find a customer that has a problem, find a solution to it, charge them. That's business. You're able to scale that up as you can find more customers. You build a system to find more customers. You build a system to provide the solution to all of those customers. And then you build the operations to be able to do it profitably. Right? That's business. But we complicate it with all of this other stuff. So everybody who's listening to this, let me introduce you to something that I think is the world's biggest lie. And if anybody wants to argue with me about it, hit me up and I'll prove you wrong. Like, I know that this is wrong, right? So the world now talks about sales funnels. Oh, you need a marketing funnel. It is the biggest buzzword out there. But it was designed by marketing software companies in order to validate their product with the lowest amount of risk. So if you're telling me that I need your software, but I don't have a step before someone gives you money so that you can keep paying me for my software.
Right.
So instead of validating with the customer, they tell you to validate with the lead. So go out and run Facebook ads and tell everybody about what you're doing. Yeah. And then some of them will give you their information, and then some of them will meet with you, and then some of them will buy. So you end up with talking to a bunch of people, hoping that a few of them actually buy from you.
Right.
Right. I think that that's the wrong way to build a business. And if you listen to anybody who's built anything big, they didn't start that way. They built what's called a sales cone. A funnel goes this way. A cone goes this way.
Yes.
Let me tell you the difference. First thing you do is you go and you ask somebody, hey, Nikki, what problem do you have that you're willing to pay to make go away? And you may say, man, if I get someone just to book my podcast, so I don't have to do all the 3 hours of research, looking through people's
follow-up.
Yeah. If you can find a show producer and you say, look, I'm willing to, somebody could produce my podcast for me, I'll give them $1,500 a month. Cool. I found a problem. I may not be able to do it for $1,500 a month or $1,500 a month. I'll do that. Right. Or I got a decision to make. Right.
Right.
But I know she has a problem. And then I say, hey, I'm willing to solve that problem. And as I'm learning with you, I solved the problem. I said, hey, do you know any other podcasters who have the same thing?
Same,
So I got
yeah.
my peak here.
Yeah.
I ain't doing no marketing. I'm going to ask you, because if I do it good, if I provide a great service, you're going to tell me
One
every other person.
Yep. That's how
They're
it
going to be
works.
like, "Oh, how you get all these people booked on your podcast? And I see you doing, oh, I got a producer. You should use Ron's producing company. He'll put your whole show together for you." So now my one customer turned into three.
Right. And it's so good that you mentioned this, and thank you for being so transparent, because it is a backwards. I think it's backwards, because I myself, even with this platform, a lot of people are searching. I don't search for any guests, right? My issue has been plugging people in and making sure that we have diversity in regards to each season. However, it is true, because this started out people wanting mentorship, people wanting access to information, but I can't serve everyone. So I said, here's a platform we can create and provide. And I don't have all the answers, but because I'm connected to so many different people, which is a blessing, how can I take what I have access to and provide that to those who are coming? So no, I can't mentor everyone, but now I can. And these platforms and such as yourself. So it goes back to that, what you said earlier, though, the relationships.
Customers learn to speak a second language, not the language that you assume that you know as the consultant,
That's good.
but the language of the pain of the customer.
That's good.
Right? So imagine going to a doctor and the doctor is using medical terms to describe a pain you may have internally. But if he doesn't know the translation of that to a layman, I got a sharp pain in my stomach. I have a blunt pain in my stomach. If he doesn't use those terms or understand what you mean when you say that, he don't know how to diagnose you. So many people I talk to, they're talking in their language and upset that the customer don't translate it.
Right.
Learn the second language. Learn the language of your customers and your sales will go through the roof.
Right. And going back to,
but you have to start by originally talking with customers first, developing the language, and then running your ads.
Yeah.
You want to talk to the public about what you do when you figured out the real language of the public. At the beginning, you don't know the language of the public.
And so, but yet you are investing on the front end when you really should, it should be reversed.
Yeah, it should be the other way. You should make some money, take that money and invest it in a website, take that money and invest in employees.
Yeah.
Take that, because you got to learn how to sell, get some training, all of those different things before you do advertising. Because once you start spending ad money, that means that you've exhausted your personal network.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So once you've exhausted your personal network, now you start running ads based on what you learned by selling to your personal network.
Right.
That's how it works. But nobody wants to talk about it. There's a great book called Predictable Revenue by a guy named Aaron Ross.
Okay.
And he built Salesforce.
Yeah.
He was the first sales director at Salesforce. And he talks about it. Like, we had to email strangers to talk to them and learn what they wanted. We're not running Facebook ads. We were out before Facebook.
Right.
So what are you talking about? Like, but people don't think of it that way, because when you're in Facebook and you're in Instagram, everybody's telling you how to run better Facebook ads. Yeah, that person has an incentive to tell you to run Facebook ads.
And it's a hypnosis to where it's constantly in your face to where we're zombied out.
Does Facebook have an incentive to promote Facebook ad agencies?
Of course they do.
Have you ever thought about that? Don't they have an incentive to promote Facebook ad agencies? Because if these agencies succeed, there's more ad revenue coming into Facebook. So that's why you always see these.
Cycle.
I'm like, too. Yeah. It's like, it's in their best interest to promote these agencies. But so I think you should be building a sales code, talking to customers, getting referrals, and continually to build that. Right. And then once you've learned the language, you become bilingual.
Yeah.
you can take that, speak to ads, and you have more effective ads.
Right. And I love that this is a more strategic approach to rather than just going out and attempting to cast this wide net, when we have to understand everybody, whatever it is that we are selling, serving, product and or service is not for everyone. It is not, and it's not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. But this strategy of working the network, asking people what it is that they're needing, then there is a ripple effect from that one to the next. Then you begin to leverage those relationships, which then leads you into another space. I hear one thing that is often overlooked by business owners or small business owners or solopreneurs is emails. Like, we're not collecting emails. We're not we're trying to do all this flashy stuff when you can send emails directly to someone and it has more impact. What's your thoughts regarding that?
I email strangers for a living. I set 6,700 meetings last year with strangers. Oh, gosh. Right? So
via
far,
email.
Only via email. I don't spend any money on advertising. Wow. Right? I only email people to grow the business for me and my clients. And because a lot of people, so I can't run a business talking about email, but I'm running Facebook ads. It don't make sense. It's not congruent. I'm not my integrity isn't there. If I'm telling you, you can build a business via email, but I'm running Facebook and LinkedIn ads, you probably shouldn't listen to me. Yeah. Like, it just don't make sense. Like, it's like, dude, well, why ain't you using what you're telling me to do what you're telling me to do? Yeah. It would make sense. Yeah. So I'm a firm believer that you can find anybody's email nowadays for about $100. You can get unlimited email addresses of anybody on the planet, right? And that's how I ended up. We got into this by talking about why you should buy a business. Yeah. In 2012, I started working with Don Breckenridge on building out their sales systems. And then Brian Matthews and a bunch of other people at Cultivation Capital in St. Louis, they started asking me to work with some of their portfolio companies to help them to build out sales systems, right? So I started doing that. I'm like, but every time that they get another round of capital, I don't get none of it. I just get my little consulting fee. I want to have my own company. So I ended up buying a software company out of Austin, Texas in January of 2018, right? Okay. And it was a software company. I used to give a speech at 1 Million Cups, which is like on Channel 9.
Yes.
And I would go and I would always give a talk called I can't code, but you can't sell, right? Because all of the software companies were so proud of their ability to code. But I'm like, y'all can't make any money. Like, I could actually sell. But so we need to kind of respect each other, because if I want to sell software, I need your software. But if you want to, get your product out there, you need my sales skills. Right. So in 2018, I bought a company called Lead Pilot out of Austin, Texas, and I converted that into what's today PitchDB, which is the largest podcast database. Yeah, right. Now, why is that important? Well, PitchDB, Lead Pilot, which is what I bought, gave me access to 258 million people's email addresses. I bought that database asset. So I can email anybody. If they ain't changed their email in the last 3 years, I probably still got their email account attached to their LinkedIn address, right? So we can reach out to just about anybody. So that's what we do. But that company was a company that I bought. It would have cost me millions of dollars to try to build a database of 300 million people's emails, right? Even just to build out the software, it would have cost me millions of dollars. But I was able to buy this thing for pennies on the dollar, right? And have a running business that provides a great service to our over 2,000 people right now on that software. We survived. We launched November of 2019 as a speaking gig platform. The crazy world stopped in March of 2020. nobody was able to go in and give speaking events anymore. So we added podcast. It didn't start off as podcast. The world told me I needed to be doing something other than speaking. So we added podcast to it. Now podcast is the most searched thing on the platform because anybody can go on a podcast. Everybody doesn't want to do public speaking.
Right. It is a difference.
So so you just listen to what the opportunities present. Right. And so that's email. That's what we're doing. We're emailing podcast hosts saying, hey, are you looking for interesting guests? And they'll say, yeah. And then we say, hey, you want to have me on there?
Right. I got somebody for you. This has been absolutely amazing, Ron. You have to promise to come back at a later time. Yes. Yes. Leveraging these opportunities. Actually, I mean, there's no reason why we can't be living out success as we define it. You know, this strategy and then the shift of leveraging what we already have or what it is that we see there's an actual need and some ask for, starting there totally shifts the game when it comes to this idea of a business owner. So I thank you so much for sharing and giving us this insight. Ron Story Jr., we've had an amazing time learning from you. And I know that you have learned something to take you, no matter what phase you may be in your business, or if you've not even started. Here are some tools to get you further faster without breaking the bank, and also not being negligent of developing and leveraging what you already have, not starting from ground zero. So thank you for giving us your time and joining us for another segment of Conversations in the Nick of Time. Until we see each other again, give time and take time. Take care.